Hello and welcome to the Godless Family Webcast. I'm your host, Aubrey Adrianson, and with me tonight is Amanda Hayes, my wonderful co-host. Say hello, Amanda.
Hi there.
And our guest today is Candace Bell, and I've asked Candace to introduce herself, and so she's going to do that. Go ahead, Candace.
Thank you. I am a mom of three. They're all preschool age. And then I have a blog at nonprofitist.blogspot.com. I don't know what all you want me to include as far as my introduction is concerned, but it's really just mom and blogger.
That's okay. One of the things that that happened during the pre-show is that Candace is, and one of the reasons why we have her on, and I know I'm kind of tripping over my own words here, is that she does teach her children science, and that she's very motivated and interested in this topic. And so we brought Candace on because she is doing that with her. You have a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old that you're doing that, a 4-year-old that you're doing that with, right?
Yeah, so my kids are 1, 2, and 4. The 1-year-old really sucks at science. She's not very good at it. But the 2-year-old and the 4-year-old are definitely picking things up, and they're very interested in learning, and so we've focused on that quite a bit.
Great. So as you all know, this episode is about teaching science to preschoolers specifically. And one of the reasons why Amanda and I wanted to have this topic on is, well, we both have young children. Mine are no longer preschool age, but I do remember they're not that much older than preschooler age. And then Amanda has a preschooler, and so does Candace. But also, the science is very important. Can you guys hear my cat meow?
Yeah.
There's so many distractions going on behind the computer right now. There was a kid, there was a cat. So let me start over. Science is really important, not only in the atheist community, but in general for everyone. And there's a lot of dissatisfaction, not only in the atheist community, but with the people in general over the quality of science education in the United States specifically, and I'm sure in other places around the world. And so one of the things that parents are trying to do, like me and Amanda and Candace, is kind of give our kids this jump start into science, give them this love of science, something to take to school with them so that they can keep that going in the school, and maybe even have the school help keep them going, keep them learning. But that starts with getting them interested, first of all, in science, and then giving them kind of this base to work from. And so that's what some of the things that we're going to talk about today. And so with that, I think we're just going to jump right in. And the first question that I have, and I would like everyone to answer it, is what kinds of things can we reasonably expect preschoolers to be able to do? And so we're talking about, usually we're talking about 3- and 4-year-olds, but we can also include 2-year-olds in this. What is it that they're capable of doing? What can we ask them to do? And I'm going to start with Candace, since she's our guest.
Well, we can ask a lot of them. Children are very easily fascinated by new things, and so I think that we can ask them to draw connections and to tell us what they observe. My children record their observations and make connections and discover like different things that I may not have noticed. So I think critical thinking skills, I mean, we can ask, and actually speaking of which, this is exciting. I think we can ask a lot of them. They're brilliant. We just have to give them the opportunity.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely encouraging learning is really important. And I've just done rudimentary things with my kids, but even the 3-year-old, I've noticed they're really good at a very basic understanding of the scientific method, kind of like Candace said, recording what the experiment is, what they think is going to happen, what actually happened, and why. And one of the things I found is that even after we do something that like an actual science experiment, they are so excited that they're not ready for it to be over. You know, if we are mixing something together, like, you know, we're mixing like oil and water and like food coloring, you know, we kind of observe what happens, and then after it they're like, well, what happens if we put flour in? What happens if we put another color in? And so it ends up lasting a lot longer, and it's like, you know, at school it could very likely be a chore for them. But I think that when you start fostering the love of science at home, it really gets them creative and gets them excited about it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Great. You know, when I wrote that question, I was thinking of more along the lines of like fine motor skills.
Oh, okay.
No, but that's okay, because I think you guys gave great answers, and that's one of the reasons why I like doing this webcast is I'm asking questions, and yeah, I have an answer in my mind, but then I have other people giving totally different answers that are just as valuable, or sometimes even more valuable. But just as far as like things that we can ask preschoolers to do, we can definitely ask them to explore, to make guesses, make predictions, like you guys were saying. But one of the things that I found frustrating when I was working with my children when they were preschoolers is I was trying to lead them to some place. Like, okay, we're going to learn. One of the things Candace and I were talking about pre-show is buoyancy. We learned about buoyancy. Like, where I'm going to kind of lead them into this conclusion in buoyancy. And they can't make logical guesses. I mean, they can. Children are definitely capable of that, but they don't always make logical guesses. So you have to be ready for some really off-the-wall guesses and responses, and go with the flow with preschoolers. So just be ready for the unexpected, I think, with preschoolers, because they're gonna throw you curveballs, and
they definitely have their own minds. My son the other day asked the question, if the world is constantly spinning, does it get dizzy? And so I asked him, I was like, well, what do you think? And he goes, no. And then he just walks off, and I'm like, you don't want to talk about it? Because we can talk about it. And he's like, no, I'm going to play Ninja Turtles now. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, that happens to me all the time. Yeah. You try and like give them this awesome explanation, and you're so excited about it, and they're like, no, I don't care.
Yeah.
Thanks for the answer. Bye.
That happens. My daughter was doing, I can't even remember what it was, but she was talking about, it was something, but she was making this whole thing up, and it was about, something science related. And I'm like, and it was wrong. And I was like, well, actually it's this. And she's like, Mom, I know that. I'm making it up. It's a story. I'm like, oh, sorry.
Way to mess with her imagination.
I know, right? And that's how I felt. I felt like such a jerk. But then I was like, well, she's got the wrong facts. She needs the correct facts. And no, I needed to shut my mouth and let her tell her story. Anything else that we can expect preschoolers to be able to do?
I'm trying to think. Sorry, go ahead. I'm
or even things that they're not able to do and that they need help with.
I have found
they're not so great with related stuff.
With what?
No.
I didn't hear you. You're cutting out a little bit.
I was joking. I said that they're not so great with stove-related stuff.
Oh yeah.
Like Bunsen burner.
But they like fire.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
And actually, you bring up a good point. I was going to mention that, and this, I should probably save this for later, but now I'm thinking about it now. kitchen and cooking, there's a lot of science in cooking. So, and that's also good because then you can teach their little butts how to cook, and they can, when they're older, they can make you dinner.
Yeah. I found even, so, Candace and I have little girls who are close to the same age. I think they're a couple months apart. But they're just like toddling, essentially, still like 1.5. And even though, I can't really include her in the science experiments, you can tell she is learning about things like physics and gravity, obviously, because, you have all these baby-proofing stuff. And so, she's had times where she kind of toddles over to the stairs and like almost falls over, and she's like, oh God, okay, I'm gonna back up, I'm not gonna do that again. And throwing balls and things like that. So even if you're not able to exactly teach them, they are kind of learning it and experimenting on their own. That's what I found anyway.
When my daughter was one of the well, probably even before she was one, maybe even 9 months old, one of her most favorite things to do is to sit in her high chair and just drop things on the floor and watch it fall. And then when she dropped them all, I'd pick them all back up, put it on her thing, and she'd just drop them one by one. And she could do that for an hour when she was a baby, and it was and it wasn't that she was being obstinate. She wanted to watch it fall, and so that was that's 9 months, a year old.
See, and I always thought mine was just she wanted to pick it up, because that's what I found is they like to drop it and then, okay, Mom, pick it up now.
Yeah.
But my youngest, she very much wants to play with her big brother and sister, and she thinks that at 1 year old, she can do whatever they can do. So if we're doing experiments, we have the I forget what they're called, but anyway, we use colored vinegar to drop it on baking soda, and we have these like little droppers that we can drop it on and make designs and stuff, and it fizzes and it's cool. But she gets really mad if we don't let her participate. So she tries very hard, and she'll take the dropper and she'll try and soak up some of the colored vinegar and drop it onto the thing. And she's just awful at it, but she's trying. And I think building those motor skills and letting her see those reactions too. She's included. She's not, baby in the corner type of thing. But also it's teaching her right along the same lines, because they're picking up everything right now too.
Yeah, mine's kind of the opposite though. Mine is like baby in the corner. I try and do our science experiments when she's down for a nap, because it's such a pain in the butt. Oh my God, I guess I'm just lazy. But one thing I was going to say that I noticed, and I know we're talking about preschoolers, but just while we're on the toddlers, one thing we like to do, my husband and I, and even the boys, is like get blocks and like build these towers up really fast, because she insists on knocking it down, and it just really drives her brothers crazy. So it's like we'll try and make it a game where we go around the living room and build up all these towers and see how fast she can knock it down, and then it kind of saves the boys from wanting to wring her neck, because we kind of make a game out of it. So she loves that. She loves knocking things over. So.
Mine loves destruction as well. Yeah, she has gotten into fights with the older ones recently, especially where she wants to knock down their towers. Or she's recently discovered what cars do, and I was super proud of her, because she started making noises and making it go. I'm like, you're one. That's awesome. Congratulations. But now she, my son has all of his tractors and stuff that he has his thing where he does his digging, and that's his thing. But now she's wanting to play as well. And she'll go over there and just take his toy, and she's like, well, I'm playing with this now. So she's definitely wanting to participate.
That doesn't stop you guys. They still do that. This is now. You walked away. You looked away from it for a minute. You must be done playing with it. It's
yeah, exactly.
Oh, I can't wait for that to stop. So I think for me, as far as any advice that I could give, is just, expect the unexpected, and if you design an experiment and they don't want to do it your way, let them do it their way. Uh, that's happened to me a couple of times where I've had this grand idea of this thing they're gonna do, and they'll be like, "Mom, no, we're just gonna, we're just gonna make this big mess and throw everything, and we're gonna glue this over here, and screw what you had planned." And I think that that's okay because you want to make it fun, and it's not fun for them if you have all the control. So that would be some other pieces of advice that I would have as far as dealing with them and what they're capable of doing. They're capable of messing up your plans.
Yeah. And messing up things in general. That's like the biggest piece of advice that I think I can offer is just to let them make a mess, because it's such a great way for them to learn when they have control and they don't have somebody. Preschoolers are always being told what to do. They're always being told not to make messes and, not to get disgusting and not to, throw your food all over the floor. And so there are lots of times if you have to kind of go through and think like, okay, is this the end of the world if, they got crayon on the walls, or they spilled a bunch of crap everywhere, because it is really the best way for them to learn. So trying to keep
learn
them
about cleaning afterwards too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, trying to keep them clean and organized all the time, and like sometimes you just have to let them go crazy with stuff. My 3-year-old really loves cracking eggs, and he sucks at it. Oh my gosh, he's so bad. But it's like I'm like, yeah, dude. He's like, can I crack the eggs? I'm like, yes, go get like 10 washcloths, but yeah, you can crack the damn egg.
I remember going through that, yes. And we would be every December we make cookies. We make a special kind of cookie called a Hildebrötchen. It's my all-time favorite cookie. It's a German cookie, and it calls for 1 egg. And I swear they could there was a period of time where the children could not even get the egg in the bowl, even if they cracked the egg over the bowl. Or half the shell went in. I mean, it was either that. Either the egg didn't make it into the bowl, or the egg made it into the bowl with half the shell.
Yep.
So, you just have to be like, all right, fine, whatever. We're making cookies. We're going to get flour everywhere. It's good. Let's just go with it. And a little bit of shell in your cookie. It's all right.
Yeah, exactly.
The more with making a mess, too. What happened?
Oh, you cut out for a second, but I don't think
Did you say uh-oh?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. No, the more I found that they have fun making the mess and stuff. So whatever experiment we happen to be doing, when we're done, then it's time for cleanup, and they're okay with that. Like, okay, we made our mess and now we're gonna clean it up. If I'm freaking out or trying to be controlling during the experiment, that's when I know I'm gonna have problems. Like they're gonna get frustrated because they're wanting to do this experiment that I've gotten them all excited about, and then I'm trying to control everything. But afterwards, even just the other day, or just any time really, the 2-year-old and the 4-year-old, if they make a mess, they know that they have to clean it up, and I help them. Or if they'll get frustrated if they can't clean it up, and then they'll ask for help, which is awesome. But I think it helps them that way too, just as far as recognizing, okay, we had a lot of fun and we did our experiments, and now it's time to clean up and we'll move on to something else.
I agree. Even with my kids, they're 6 and 8 right now. If I let them go through do anything, an experiment, cooking, whatever it is they're doing, art project, if I let them just kind of tear the room up and do whatever they want, they're a lot more willing to clean afterwards because they had that kind of time to just explore and do what it is that they wanted to do.
Right.
And they know the cleaning's coming too. So I agree.
Definitely.
All right, next question. How much can a preschooler understand? So when we're doing these experiments or we're talking to them about science, what can we reasonably expect them to understand? Candace.
I think we can help them understand quite a bit. It just has to be done in chunks. So, um, if, for example, we did an experiment where we put different colors in different tubes, and so they got to. So I like with the first part of it, we put the tablets in the tubes and they fizzed, and they learned about the chemical reaction and it creating a solution. And so they learned the word solution. And I'm huge on vocabulary. I absolutely hate it when parents make up words or they allow their children to use baby talk. It really frustrates me. So we work on the correct words and enunciating as well. And so they learn different words and they learn about that reaction and that how it makes colors. And then and they understand that. If I break it down, then neither one of them has a problem with it. Although I do think that the 2-year-old is a little bit of a liar, because as soon as the older one says that he gets it, then she's like, oh yeah. She just copies whatever he says, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure you're cheating right now. But okay, we'll move on.
Mine do that.
In any case, but then we'll move on to the next chunk, which would be like using the tubes and holding them up to the light and seeing how the light refracts through the colored water, and then we'll spend some time on that, or we'll even put that out until later after lunch or nap time. But I think they can understand a lot. We just have to break it down for them in a way that they can understand. As long it's how the information is presented, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Amanda, you want to weigh in?
I think cause and effect has been mainly what I'm focusing on for the 3-year-old. He is really good at understanding cause and effect, and he does it every day on his own, even when we're not doing experiments. I've got plants on our deck in the backyard, and it drives me insane. But over the last couple of months, I have gradually found each plant tipped over onto the ground below, and I don't have a green thumb, so it's I'm pretty proud of these plants. But he is just so interested to see what happens, and so he's obsessed with that. And I've actually had probably 4 glasses get broken because he just sets things up and just tips them over to see what happens. So anytime something is up on the deck, he's got to knock it down and see what happens. And he loves going down and oh my gosh, I knocked it over and it shattered. Wow, yay. So that, it sucks, but also I kind of love it because he's taking it upon himself to learn about things. I've got 1 plant left and I'm afraid for its life, but I think it's not much you can do about it. So I certainly think cause and effect, they're really good at understanding that. Predicting, not so much. If I give him this or a this, sometimes he predicts it, and most of the time he just guesses. But if afterwards I'm why do you think that happened? He's I don't know. Let's try something else. I don't know. I can't explain that to you. That's most of course, I can't think of anything else right now, but yeah, that's what I found.
Yeah, I find that even now with my 6-year-old, making predictions is really tough, especially when you're trying to teach them something new, and they really only have a vague idea of what it is you want to talk about. They're going to make really crappy predictions.
And sort of outlandish predictions as well. I'm that's so not going to happen. I don't know why you would think that.
You're just going to make some crazy stuff up, and you're just going to be okay, so let's jump into this. But what I wanted to say for this question is, they're not going to understand everything at once. So don't expect that from them, to understand everything. So if you're doing inertia, and you go over inertia and you have these really cool experiments where, where you're doing like this ball that rolls down and things like that, they're going to forget some part of that, and that's okay, because you're probably going to go back to it later. They're going to want to do that experiment again, especially if it was fun. And so that would be my thing with that is, they're going to understand a lot. They're going to understand. We don't give children enough credit for how much they understand. For example, with my son, especially with my son, I'll be talking to him, and it's like you can hear his brain rattling around in his head. He's not paying attention. He's like looking at me. Yeah, whatever, mom. Just like anything to get rid of me. And then like 2 days later, he'll be talking about what I said. And he completely understood everything. So they get it. Don't worry about it.
It is really, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say the same thing. It's really surprising what they can come back with, even just something that you've mentioned once in passing, or just something that they've experienced once, and you're like, wow, like you were paying attention? That's crazy. How can you understand that already? No.
Yeah, I thought you were more interested in what was going on in your nose. I had no idea that you were actually listening to me.
Yeah, no kidding.
Sometimes they pick up too much, I think.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, sometimes more than maybe parents want, but...
I think that happens to all parents.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Mommy said...
Yeah,
exactly.
I am so I'm so terrified of that, especially... Well, with the 6 and the 3-year-old, because they have no filter. So it was like, oh, I just have to share a story really quick, because I was walking into the store with all 3 kids, and, when you take 3 small kids into the store, it's really hard. But I was like holding the baby and got the other 2 on my hand, and there was this guy who was walking in behind us, and he was a pretty big guy, and my 3-year-old was just staring at him while we were walking, and I was like, please don't say anything, please don't say anything. And so he goes, and then the guy waves to me, goes, hi, and Ashton goes, hi, and then he turns to me, and I thought, oh, God, here it comes, and he goes, Mom, that strong guy just waved at me, and I was like, oh, thank you, strong guy. Like, I was like, oh, my gosh. I'm like, oh, God, if he says something embarrassing, I'm going to turn around, and I'm going to go to a store in a different city because I can't handle it.
Something like that happened to me as well. We were in McDonald's, and there were... it was the first time my daughter had ever noticed race. And, of course, it happens in the middle of McDonald's, and she's talking as loud as she possibly can. But she noticed that everyone in the McDonald's was white except for these 2 black women that were in line. And she's like, look, Mom, 2 black women.
Oh my
loud. They're standing in line. And I'm like, oh my gosh, no. I've been around people of color before, please.
Oh no.
Don't make these people think that you have never been around people of color before. And she was just making an observation and vocalizing it, and it was, yeah, I think it happens to all of us.
Yeah, it has me in constant state of being terrified whenever we go out somewhere. I just want to get in and out as quickly as possible.
So along the lines of the last question, how much can we expect children to understand? What are our expectations as parents when we start talking about complex scientific theories like evolution or Big Bang? Or is that something you don't even cover?
Well, I cover it. We have 2 really great books that I was able to pick up on, one on evolution and one on the Big Bang Theory. And I think the one on evolution is it's like The Tree of Life, A Story of Evolution or something like that. And we read it times. They don't really have the patience for it because it's not as broken down in chunks as some of the other ones are. So I'm gonna have to search for a different one because they don't have the patience for it yet. So that one they have trouble with. The one on The Big Bang Theory, though, I believe it's called "You Are Older Than the Stars." It's a really fantastic, it's a poem, and so it goes through and explains different parts of the Big Bang Theory, and then it relates it back to the child, and it says that you're older than the stars, and they really, really enjoy that one. However, the 1-year-old got a hold of it recently, so I'm going to have to buy a new copy. The 2-year-old was devastated, absolutely devastated, because she's a huge fan. But so the more complex concepts, I think of it's broken down, but it really depends, because some of it they just don't have the attention span for yet.
Amanda?
I have to agree with that. I haven't really seen a lot of enthusiasm for complex topics like that, and so at this point, I have a 6-year-old, and so he is more excited about that. He is like firing off questions at me randomly while we're in the car. So I feel like most of the stuff that the 3-year-old picks up is just kind of secondhand when listening, and he has no other choice but to listen to me talk. But yeah, he hasn't really shown interest in anything like that. Yeah, that I can see, and when I do try to talk to him about it, he would rather be doing something else. So
yeah, and when we're talking about evolution and
and I think
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I mean, there are some complex or more complex things that they do get really interested in, like the cycle. They're always asking, why does it rain, right? Or why are there clouds, or something like that. We go into a discussion about the water cycle, and at first it was tell them about the water cycle, and then they would totally blow me off and just be like, I think water's just falling out of the sky. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. So, but the more I've repeated it, the more they've picked up and know condensation now and evaporation. They suck at pronouncing them still, but they know what they are.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a matter of that repetition too, like you were saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the thing about evolution and the Big Bang specifically is there's not a lot of hands-on experiments you can do with preschoolers. For those ones with evolution, so far the best I've found that you can do as far as hands-on is crossbreeding flowers and plants, but that takes a tremendous amount of time. It's not a one-day activity.
Yeah,
right. So, yeah, when we're talking about those two theories specifically, I definitely think books. There are good YouTube videos and just repetition and fielding questions. I often find I get a lot of questions after the fact.
Right.
Like you were saying, Amanda, in the car, they're rattling off questions. You're like, oh crap. Yeah, we talked about that a couple days ago. Okay. But I found that anything that you can do hands-on, they're going to grasp onto that at least one piece at a time. You can do for the water cycle. You can even it's really fun. You can make your own rain. You can I'll have to
with ice in the jar, like the mason jar?
Well, yeah, you can boil water and have the condensation build up on the lid. But in the middle of the pot, you can have a bowl, and then the water will actually drip into the bowl. You're actually distilling water, but still, it's really cool. And if you have like a clear lid, you can watch it. I can find that and put a link to it. But I mean that's
really
neat.
cool.
And then they get to play with fire, and so that's awesome.
Yeah.
The
fire thing is scary for me. The 3-year-old is extremely curious, and so when I'm cooking something, I don't know if he does it just to like troll me, but he comes over and he puts his hand up and he's like, "Is this hot?" And I'm like, "No." So
Dive in.
yeah, like
Mommy ninja.
he'll grab the handle, and of course the handle's never hot, no matter what you're doing, but then he'll like gradually start to move it up, and like, so yeah, half the time I'm like, oh my gosh, no. And when he's not going for something that's actually hot, I'm like, okay, one of these days I'm not going to get there in time, and he's going to learn, and one of us is going to be really, really sorry. I think it's going to be him.
Yeah, I think my kids troll me sometimes too. Like today, we were doing iron beads, and I've told my son like at least 3 or 4 times that the metal part of the iron is hot. And so he's standing next to me as I'm ironing, and he's like, "Huh? Huh?" I'm like, "Dude, touch it. Go ahead. It's hot." And he's like, "No, I'm good." I'm like, then back off." God, you suck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kids make great trolls.
They do, and I swear, it is that, huh? Oh, what are you gonna do? I'm gonna touch it. I'm gonna touch it.
Well, they're looking for a reaction.
Yeah.
Did we cover everything with that?
I wanted to just briefly mention, you guys were talking about books, and I absolutely 100% agree with that. One of the things my kids look forward to most is story time at night. And obviously they like making that last as long as they can, because then they don't have to go to bed immediately. So I really like using that time for learning, and not reading Goodnight Moon 900 times, or The Very Hungry Caterpillar, because I'm really tired of those. But I found this book just by default. I can't even remember. I think it was given to us. And it's called Oh Say Can You See by Dr. Seuss. I'm sure you've heard of that. But it's all about plants and flowers and photosynthesis. And obviously, a Dr. Seuss book, it's rhyming and it's fun. And they have learned so much about it, like more than I ever could have taught them going in the backyard. And they love it. So I really, really like using books if I'm not very good at teaching them something. At least, they get excited about it.
A really great book for evolution that is a rhyming book is Little Changes by Tiffany Taylor. I don't think I could possibly promote that book enough. My kids just love it, and it does a good job of illustrating one aspect of evolution. It doesn't cover everything. But it does a good job of explaining a couple of the basic concepts. And my son especially loves it. And he makes my daughter read it to him all the time. And then, like you were saying, Amanda, at bedtime, my daughter was especially good at this. But now that she's reading independently on her own, we don't do this as much. But she would used to just ask me questions, like fire off science questions. And for a long time, I had to actually go do a bunch of research. Like, she would ask me, well, how did the eye evolve? Like, oh, crap. Okay. Well, I'm going to tell you tomorrow.
Exactly.
So the next day I'd go and I'd do a bunch of research, and then I'd like, okay, this is what happened. And I'd tell her about, okay, what about the ear? Like, oh, all right. And so we'd have these really great discussions, and they would just, like I said, fire off questions, and we'd talk about it. And if I couldn't answer it, I'd find the answer, and we talk about it the next night, and that was always really neat when we were doing that.
Oh, definitely.
Like I said, we don't do that anymore.
I love it when my kids ask questions that I don't know the answer to, because then we can look it up together, and we do. We'll find like a YouTube video or something, and go through and explain it, and I'm like, all right, we both learned something new. Sweet. So it's a learning experience for both of us, and they see that it's okay. I think the biggest message that I can get across to them is it's okay to not know the answer. Just look it up or find out. You don't have to always know. And Mom doesn't always know the answer, too.
I think my kids even like it when I don't know the answer. We get to look it up together, and it's like,
and I try to stump me.
I like that too. Yeah, was able to go through several images and videos on how like the brain works, not necessarily how it processes information and sending the messages to your body, but how the two halves work together, and what they are and what all the pieces are called. Because I had, I took a psychology course and obviously lots of science classes in high school, but I couldn't just like name stuff off the top of my head. So it was really fun for us to like look at pictures of brains, and be able to talk about the different parts of it and how they work. That was awesome. So I love looking up stuff with the kids.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So my next question, and I think that this goes right into that, is what should we be teaching them, or basically what do you guys recommend as parents of preschoolers as good topics to broach with your preschool age children? Candace?
Do you want me to go first? Okay. Anything that can be easily translated into a physical activity. Obviously, you mentioned earlier hands-on activity. Kinesthetic learning is huge with them. I mean, books are great tools for things that we can't do an activity for. But so, like, different concepts, I suppose. We've learned about aspects of geology and biology and chemistry and physics. I really don't think that there's anything that's off limits. The challenge might be trying to find an activity for it, but I don't really think that there's anything that's off limits. Like, they'll everything that they process, they're going to apply it towards something else too, and then they'll have more questions and they'll continue learning. So we like we did a cloud finder and they learned about cirrus and cumulus clouds, and then they translate that to what they learned about the water cycle. I don't think anything's off limits. It just, like, find an activity for it and they'll eat it up.
Mm-hmm. Amanda?
I don't really have a good answer for this as far as answering your exact question. I don't have a lot of time to be formally teaching, just because of the little one. But I found that the best teaching is when we're going through our normal routine, and if we can talk about not just the reasons that we do it, but if we can find little lessons in anything we do, like you said, cooking and cleaning up and even, putting away toys, that is probably the easiest way to teach them, just going through your day-to-day activities. I have no examples right now. I can't even think of anything. I'm sorry. But yeah, that's just been the easiest thing for me, because I don't have a lot of time carved out to, sit down and do lesson plans. But
Right.
yeah.
Who does?
Right. Well, you see all those, I call, like, Pinterest, like, Satan, because you see all those things on Pinterest, like, the Montessori, like, I can't think of what they're called, but you just see all these things, and I just thought, God, is that what people are doing with their kids every day? Like, I do not have time for that. So, yeah.
I see those, and I've noticed that, and one of the reasons why I started doing the Godless Family resource is I've noticed that a lot of those websites, you still have to make so many changes to even get what they're doing into your home. You either have to change the content, get more content, change the experiment because it's at the wrong age level, or it's not quite what it is you want to teach them, so you have to kind of add something to the lesson or take something out of the lesson. And I find that very frustrating when I'm on the internet. I'm like, I want to do an experiment, and what am I going to do? I don't know. And you start looking at this stuff, and it's just not quite right because for all those different reasons. And then you're spending all this time And so I really like what both of you said. Like Candace said, nothing's off limits, and I agree. You're really only limited to, you know, what it is you can do with them, and preschoolers need to be touching things. They need to be moving. They can't be sitting. And that's one of the reasons why I posted that link to about attention span is, you know, even if a preschooler is highly motivated and into what it is you're doing, them working on an activity alone, the best you're going to get is about 15 minutes, depending on your kid. I know that my daughter, when she was in preschool, she could paint for 30 minutes or more all by herself. But that was something that she didn't need me for either, and she was highly motivated. But I also like what you said, Amanda, is you know, things that come up in your day. So kids are, again, you're going to have that higher attention span, you're going to have higher motivation when the kids are asking you to do it, and they're asking you about something, and then, you know, if you can just throw something together real quick to kind of illustrate a concept or an idea, they're going to love it and they're going to be into it. So I think those are both great answers to that question. And I lost my train of thought.
Well, just to add to that real quick, the better that you can increase your understanding, I think, the easier you can relay it to your child. I think it was, I don't remember the quote right now, but so I'm much more familiar with concepts in like geology and how glaciers shape valleys and stuff, and so when we are in the car and we can like look at different things, it's much easier for me to explain it because I'm very familiar with it. So sometimes I have to do some reading and brush up on things, but it makes it a lot easier for me to go through and explain it to them when I have a very thorough understanding. If I'm learning it as well, then we might have to go through it a few times.
And that brings us back to repetition. You know, just repeat the experiment more than one time. Talk about it more than one time. The kids are, you know, if it's a fun experiment, they're going to ask to do it again anyway.
Yeah, I've had to do that a couple of times. We had one where, I don't know, evidently, like, you put an egg in water, and I guess if you add salt to it, it floats or something, and no matter what I did, that egg sank to the bottom every time, and I felt like such a failure. So I had to look up a couple of different ways to do it before we could figure it out. But I was like, it's going to float. Didn't float. Didn't float. All right, forget it. We're done. Forget it. It's over.
I hate it when that happens. Have you ever done the, and this, actually, this is perfect. The next question, the last question I had for you guys are, what are some activities that we can do or resources online? So favorite activities, favorite resources, things that you recommend. Because you were talking about eggs, Amanda, one of my favorite ones is taking the egg and putting it in vinegar and letting the vinegar dissolve the shell.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like you were saying, Candace, with the chunks. Well, that's one chunk. You can talk about how and why the vinegar dissolves the shell, but not the membrane. But then you have this awesome membrane, and you can talk about osmosis. And then you can take the egg out of the vinegar and put it in colored water, and you can color the egg via the osmosis. And so, my gosh, we did that when my daughter was in preschool, and for about a year after that, she kept asking if we could do it again and again and again. I'm like, no, I don't, eggs cost money, kid. So that's one for anyone out there listening. Candace, any favorite activities or resources?
Well, favorite activity, like hands down, the kids' favorite activity is Mentos and Diet Coke because explosion. And they think that that's fantastic. That is the best thing. But more realistically, it's going to be the like vinegar and baking soda is just like the automatic go-to for me. That's my kids' favorite. But then also teaching them about inertia, and we have different things that we'll like test it out on. So like pushing things down the hallway versus pushing them outside on the sidewalk, and how friction can slow them down, and just and then also like what happens when it stops and they keep moving, and that sort of thing. So that one's super easy because you don't need anything. Like, I mean, you can basically just do that like just with the kids. You don't need any additions. And then I don't. As far as resources go, I found this really fantastic kit that my kids and I use. So it has a lot of different resources in it. So we've like taken a magnifying glass and looked at different things up close. I was really tempted to show them how to use the magnifying glass um, uh, to burn things outside, and then I was like, no, I can't do that. But they figured out that it gets hot, and then I took it away, because we're not going to have little arsonists in my house. But so it has a kit, and it has all these different things that you can do, and that's available like at Toys R Us. They've got a bunch of different ones, and then also online, if you just Google science experiments for preschoolers or toddlers or whatever age range, then they have some fantastic resources. You just have to look, and then be open to the different ideas, because some of the ones that I found, I'm like, well, that's stupid, but my kids were super excited about, so okay, we'll do it. But so it's just being open to different ideas too, and actually making the effort to look.
I find that that's difficult, is that openness, because I have this idea in my head of something I want to do, and they'll pick something out that I think is stupid. I'm like,
Right.
this is stupid. And they're like, no, it's not, Mom. It's awesome. I'm like, fine, I'll get it for you. And they love it, and they play with it, and do the experiment, or whatever it is, whatever it is that I think stupid that they love. And I agree with you. You have to be open-minded and let them do things that you think is stupid.
Yep.
As long as it's not really stupid, like, jumping off a cliff, or,
Well, I'll try not to let them jump off cliffs. I don't know. I think the 4-year-old's pretty determined, and I'm just kidding.
Teach them about gravity, right?
Exactly.
So, Amanda, what are some of your favorite activities or resources?
Well, I think I totally have to agree with Candace about Google. I know we talked about it before, Candace. I don't have a fancy science experiment kit, so I just have to use whatever we have at home. But I just Google science experiments for kids, for preschoolers, for 6-year-olds, for 3-year-olds. And one that I really like, I'm actually looking at it right now, is sciencekids.co.nz, and then it has /experiments, and they've got all these really simple and easy experiments that you can do with stuff at home. One that my kids really, really liked was the melting chocolate experiment. It's summertime now, and so it's awesome to do it. But we took like a cup of chocolate chips and put one in the hot sun and then one in the shade to see how quickly they melted. And, we kind of poked it, and we checked it after a certain amount of time to see what we thought would happen. And they loved that. Only one reason they loved it was because they got to eat the chocolate afterwards. But they also really liked, going back and checking and seeing what the progress was. And at the end of it, they were so excited that they wanted to start putting the cups in different places in the yard to see if it would melt, depending on where it was. Like, I think we had one on the trampoline, and then one just on the sidewalk, and one up on the deck. So they really liked that one. The baking soda and vinegar one, I
That's
think
just awesome. Yeah.
it is. Well,
It's a classic.
It
It's
is.
so fantastic.
Yeah, I do think it was a little disappointing for them, because, when I was asking them, I was like, a lot of people do this to like show volcanoes and how they work. And so I was like, okay, so we're going to mix this. What do you guys think is going to happen? They're like, it's going to explode into the sky. And I was like, God, don't get your hopes up. It's totally not going to do that. And so like when I show them what it does, it just, it kind of like aggressively bubbles down the side. They were just like, oh. I'm like, well, you really built it up in your head, okay? Like, it's not my fault.
Oh, I get those like a plastic sheet, or not plastic, like the tinfoil pans, because so it doesn't ruin my stuff. Anyway, we get the tinfoil pans, and then they draw pictures like with various droppers of different colors, and that's fun because it's like painting, but it's also science. So they just like draw pictures with the droppers in the baking soda, and that's a blast.
And it fizzes and everything.
Yeah, and so it
Pretty
fizzes
cool.
and there's colors, and they make a disaster, which takes forever to clean up, but they have a blast.
And you use like food coloring
Yeah,
to
just
draw the picture?
right. So I'll get like 4 paper cups or whatever and put vinegar in each one, and then I'll color each one, and then they've got their own droppers, and so they'll get like a drop of yellow, and they'll try and draw sun, and it doesn't work, but they have a lot of fun with it, or shapes. And that's the other thing too is, oh, that's what I was going to bring up. Some really great resources online that aren't necessarily for experiments, but my kids absolutely love a dinosaur train, because aside from the talking dinosaurs and the time traveling train, they're very accurate. Like, I had no idea that my son could pronounce Pteranodon or Cretaceous or anything, but he's very good at picking it up, and then he's also very good at correcting me. Like if I mess something up and I say that it's a pterodactyl, and he's like, no, it's a pteranodon. I'm like, I'm sorry, dude. But so that one's fantastic as far as like dinosaurs are concerned, and then of course Sid the Science Kid is just awesome, and that one gets him super excited about science too.
Yeah. There's a lot of good stuff on PBS. Those are
I
both
love PBS.
Those are both PBS. There's some stupid stuff on PBS, but those two are really good. And this is not science related, but crap, I can't think of it now because my kid's not watching anymore. The reading one.
Oh, the one with the power to read. I totally know
Yes,
what you're talking.
yes.
Super readers?
Super Reader, Super Wise.
Yes,
Super Wise.
love that one.
And that's really good for a preschooler because it is letter recognition and then sound to letter recognition. They're not actually going to learn how to read except for maybe a word or two here or there, but it is good. It is good kindergarten prep as far as letter and then sound to letter recognition. That's
Definitely.
And
then
I'm a language teacher, so I'm so sorry.
Timu Mizumi has math powers, which is just awesome. And the 2-year-old and the 4-year-old pick those up really quickly. They both know all of their shapes and numbers, and I worked very little on that, like very little. Timu Mizumi, they're fantastic for that.
It's funny for my son, who's in kindergarten, and he can subtract, or actually he'll be in first grade this year, and he's really good at math and adding and subtracting even larger numbers so you can figure it out. And I get a lot of pats on the back for that. I'm like, dude, I didn't do anything with that kid. That was all my daughter. The older ones teach the younger ones. And so she, for like a year, like all through first grade, all she did was teach him everything that she knew. Like she would get home from school and then it would be school time, and she was the teacher and he was the student. And they would be up there for like an hour or more, and he learned math. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah,
Good.
definitely.
That's fantastic. That's
I wish I
awesome.
could take credit, but no, that's all her. So we are out of time. This was a really fun conversation. I wish that we could keep going, but maybe, hopefully, Candace, we can have you on at another show, another time, and continue
Definitely.
having awesome conversations. I would like to give you the opportunity to promote anything if you want to promote anything at this time, your blog or anything like that.
My blog is nonprofitist.blogspot.com. And my Twitter handle is @nonprofitist. I don't really have like any projects or anything that I'm working on right now, but if I have anything come up, I will definitely tweet the crap out of it. So that's a good place to find anything that's coming up.
Great. Amanda, anything you want to promote today?
Just my blog, humanistmom.com, and then, of course, watch ProfitCast every Sunday at 9:30, like I always say.
Awesome. And then, of course, I would like to just remind you that the Godless Family Resource does have resources for parents. There is, because we're talking about science, there is a lesson on there for the scientific method. It's geared, that particular one's geared more towards middle schoolers just because of the experiment that's on there, but it's all of them are easily modified to go up or down for, to take the scientific method and change it to an elementary age child or even a preschooler, and then the elementary ones you could certainly move up and make the information more challenging or to give more information. And so I would encourage everyone to check those out, because that's one of the things that I want to do is give you guys resources that you can use and use quickly. You're not having to modify a bunch of stuff and go get a bunch of information just so you can do this one thing. It's all right there for you. So that's what I want to promote. And then I would also want to remind everyone that next week we will be talking to Dr. Dave Hawks. He's coming back on the show, and we're going to talk about viral therapy. And this is really interesting because there's a lot happening with viruses and viral therapy. Gene therapy, I think, is the most well-known, but I recently found out that you can even use viruses to cure infections. And so I asked Dr. Dave Hawks, or Dave, to come back on the show and talk to us about those things, because I just think that's fascinating, and I hope everyone else will too. And did I forget anything, ladies, before we say goodbye?
I don't think so.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for watching the show, and I hope to see everyone next week on the Godless Family webcast. Bye.